that has changed. More than a quarter century of Chinese defense increases have mounted to an overall tenfold increase in military spending. Beijing's defense spending, both official and unofficial, likely amounts to more than $200 billion, nearly 5 times as much as Japan's roughly $43 billion. This has had serious implications for the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, as its potential Chinese adversaries are now better armed and trained than ever. In considering any Japan-China naval war, we should be mindful of their respective naval doctrines. The Maritime Self-Defense Force is an almost purely defensive force, trained to escort convoys to and from Japan, conduct anti-submarine warfare, protect the country from ballistic missile attack, and conduct humanitarian operations. It is defensively armed, with relatively few anti-ship missiles and no cruise missiles. Offensive operations, with the exception of amphibious landings to take back national territory, are unheard of. While this is a noble approach to warfare, it also makes it very difficult to terminate a conflict on Japan's terms. The People's Liberation Army Navy, on the other hand, is more open-ended in responsibilities. The Chinese has more of an offensive component, its pursuit of aircraft carriers being one obvious example. In addition to the growing number of offensive-minded aircraft carriers, Chinese warships are equipped with silo-launched YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, a launching scheme that gives Beijing's fleet flexibility in dividing its ship-mounted missile silos between offensive and defensive roles. The Chinese has also sent the DH-10 cruise missile to sea, giving it a land attack capability the JMSDF lacks. As a result, we'll imagine that in our future conflict both navies are poised against one another, with the Chinese force on the offensive and the Japanese on the defensive. The PLA Navy sends several large surface task forces into the East China Sea, one centered around China's second aircraft carrier, tentatively known as Type 01A, and 2 surface action groups centered around Type 052D destroyers. Each will have a complement of Type 052B and 052C destroyers, Type 054A frigates, and even Type 056 corvettes. We'll also assume several Type 093G cruise missile submarines are part of the battle. On the Japanese side, we'll see 3 similar task groups, one centered around the 27,000-ton helicopter destroyer Kaga and 2 centered around Kongo-class destroyers, with accompanying Takanami and Akizuki-class general-purpose destroyers acting as escorts. Japan will also have a handful of Sora-class attack submarines in and around the area. Who wins the matchup? The Chinese, with its ability to carry more anti-ship missiles, can bring greater offensive firepower to the battle, at the expense of air defense and anti-submarine missiles. Chinese commanders will have to think long and hard what is the greater threat to their ships, Japanese surface ships, submarines, or aircraft, and budget the limited space in their missile silos accordingly. In this case, we'll assume the Chinese admirals have chosen to be cautious and decided to rely on their carrier and submarines for striking power. The 2 surface task forces will conduct diversionary operations and launch secondary attacks. The Chinese task forces still have a number of ways to strike the Japanese. J-15 Flying Shark fighters could fly reconnaissance missions to locate MSDF task forces. One located, the Chinese carrier would then launch a full squadron of a dozen or more J-15s, each equipped with anti-ship missiles, to overwhelm MSDF air defenses. Ideally, this would be timed with attacks by Chinese submarines to hit the Japanese fleet from multiple threat vectors. The Chinese can even bombard Japanese port facilities with DH-10 cruise missiles, preventing the Japanese from refueling and reloading. The Japanese side isn't helpless, however. As an anti-submarine destroyer, Kaga holds 7 SH-60K Seahawk anti-submarine helicopters, enough to keep Chinese attack boats at bay. The Kongo and similar Atago-class destroyers are very strong in air defense, with 90 and 96 Mk. 41 vertical launch silos, respectively, each carrying SM-2 air defense missiles and ASROC anti-submarine rockets. As a result, there is a strong possibility that Japan's defense can nullify the Chinese offense. Offensively, Japan's options are limited. Most Japanese destroyers are, like their American counterparts, limited to 8 Harpoon or indigenous Type 90 anti-ship missiles. This would give a surface task force of 4 ships 32 anti-ship missiles, a not inconsiderable force, but would also put Japanese ships in range of the Chinese fleet. A better idea would be to attack the Chinese fleet, particularly the 001A carrier, with Soru diesel-electric submarines. The Chinese is notoriously weak in anti-submarine operations, and a submarine attack has the best chance of success. The Japanese-Chinese naval matchup is no longer the one-sided affair it used to be.